The Brexiteers were very, very much always on board the train of when we, leave the EU, we will get this absolutely amazing trade deal with America. It'll make look staying in the EU completely foolish. But as we've discussed before, to be able to do that, we would have to give up some serious sovereignty, which, well, again, according to the Brexiteers, they are very ultimately against. We even saw some very early signs that would basically put either the Senate or Congress basically in charge of what we could or couldn't do in our maybe future trade deals, or what we could and couldn't trade into our own like rules, laws, and regulations. Which again, as we made the point back then, why were the Brexiteers not okay with Brussels doing that, but they're really okay when it comes to America doing that and having that law and power here in the UK? I thought we were meant to be against that, guys. You were the Brexiteers. You were the one telling us it's all about sovereignty. It's all about, quote, taking back control. But you would rather seem at this point to give up control, or at least take back control from Brussels, only to then hand it over to America. Kind of strange. But the relation, especially between, should we say, Brexit Britain, and more specifically Johnson's Brexit Britain, has fundamentally changed. Going obviously from a Trump presidency to Biden's presidency, even in between then, there were, Americans over there going, what on earth are they doing? This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And of course, Trump courted people like Nigel Farage, etc., but didn't really amount to a lot. And even then, they are alarmed by what has been going on here in the UK. So the special relationship, as it's often called, really isn't that so much special anymore. And today we're going to go over a really, really good piece in the Byline Times about this, highlighting some of these very key security issues raised by security experts in America over, over security here, which is very interesting to say the least. But before we do go jumping into that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel that way. So off we go to the Byline Times. The title is What America's Security and Foreign Experts Really Think About Boris Johnson's Brexit Britain. So, I recently attended a US forum bringing together a wide range of security and foreign policy experts to discuss the current challenges facing the US. The attendees included several American senators, members of the House of Representatives from both sides of the aisle, and well-known political analysts, with many high-ranking former diplomats of defense, national security officials, who had even served as in the US administration going back several decades. The main item of discussion was, unsurprisingly, of course, the crisis in Ukraine. And every speaker, whether Republican or Democrat, agreed that this was the defining moment for Western democracies, similar to the very much significance to the end of the Cold War, 9/11. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a threat not just to the future of Ukraine, but to European security and even the entire post-Second World War international order. Speaker after speaker was adamant that there could be no going back to the normal relations with Russia. Throughout the final outcome of the conflict, though, is yet to be determined, they said, we should be willing to back Ukraine with whatever it needs as long as it wants it. In addition, while an end to the war and suffering again is highly desirable, they believe that they should not try and pursue any kind of peace deal or ease off ramp for Vladimir Putin, in terms of which are not acceptable to the Ukrainians themselves. While regime change in Moscow is neither a stated objective or within our own domain to actually achieve, the attendees did believe that it is vital for Putin's regime is left significantly weaker so that it can never again mount such an unprovoked aggression against another territory. And of course, one of the key things there is why we've seen certainly Sweden and Finland say, well, we're joining NATO, because even they're worried about, could we be next? Putin's rambly speech did very much indicate that he wanted not just former Soviet territory back, he wanted former Russian imperial territory back. So that includes a lot of current NATO membership, and currently very much in the east of Europe, that belief of us being in the NATO alliance keeps us safe from Russian aggression. So, with the war in Ukraine was also depicted as being a root of a single of struggle of values between authoritarian and democracy. Countries such as China are keenly observing the outcome for any sign of Western weakness, with which might even encourage them to attempt a very similar aggression in its own neighborhood, for example, against Taiwan. This has fed into another angle, which came up frequently, and the strength of our own democracies. Many commentators expressed concern at the increasingly partisan nature of the US politics and the fundamental attack on the core of American democracy represented by the January 6th assault on the US Congress, and the continuing attempts in some quarters to cast doubt on the legitimacy of President Joe Biden's election. Not only does this divide and distract America from important international challenges, it is also important for the US legitimacy to be seen as upholding at home the values it espouses overseas. Several of the commentators expressed concern at the rise of populism and illiberalism in other Western democracies, such as the re-elected recent Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Hungary, or even the recent defeat of the far-right French presidential candidate Marine Le Pen. They also feared that such developments in Western democracies had encouraged Putin to think that the transatlantic alliance was so weak and divided that they would not either respond robustly or just in a sustained manner to his attack on Ukraine. One speaker even referred explicitly to Boris Johnson. Authenticity is essential in a politician. You can't be authentic and a liar at the same time. Trump was authentic. Your prime minister is another example. People get rewarded for propagating lies, and it is unhealthy development in a democracy. These exchanges prompted me to wonder how the UK is currently perceived by the more wider American analysts. In particular, had the UK's strong position on Ukraine bolstered its standing and reputation as America's strongest ally, and did it overshadow any lingering concerns over Brexit? I want to know their view of how Boris Johnson as a prime minister was. Did they see him as a strong wartime leader and mold of Winston Churchill, or did they seem, as some have suggested, a more divisive and popular figure and Britain's own version of Donald Trump? I did not try to steer any of the interviews with a leading question, but I tried to play it as much as possible to be straight with a straight bat. So here's what the experts had to say. And this is where it gets quite interesting. So they said, "You Brits are doing great on Ukraine. Your military and special forces have been awesome. The UK, of course, is screwed. Boris Johnson has too much baggage. It's scandal after scandal. Sure, the UK is doing a great job in Ukraine, and we appreciate that, but that does not change our views on Boris Johnson. He's a clown. Bojo is a bozo. The UK is declining in its importance as an ally to us. China is the biggest winner long-term strategic threats, and that our alliance with Australia is far more important. The Australians are thinking far more strategically and investing far more in their defence, while your defence budget has been going down for years. The AUKUS was a very significant deal, but it is not because of the UK. It is because of Australia. I'm not following what's going on internationally with the UK that much, but we have read in the papers about Partygate and the scandals. I've not heard about the various laws affecting the Electoral Commission, the Judicial Review, the right to public protest, the National Borders Bills Act. They all sound very worrying. To me, it's like the British government was, quote, overcompensating in Ukraine, trying to go overboard to prove it is continuing its relevance in post-Brexit, and of course to distract from the scandals at home. The UK is rudderless and is looking for a new role. It is nonsense for the UK to claim it is leading in the Ukraine. I ask you to consider a counterfactual. If the US did not step in or up to the plate on Ukraine, would it have made a difference on the international response? Of course. But if the UK had not stepped up, would the international response have been any different? No. The UK has been a loyal ally and helpful. but not on the necessary conditions for stuff to happen. The US, Poland, Germany, and of course the Ukrainians themselves are the essential players. The UK role in Ukraine is not about crisis management. It's what the UK role in Europe is longer term. It's what is the UK's influence, and it's what its economic relationships. The UK has an identity crisis. AUKUS is good, Ukraine is good, but it doesn't add up to a post-Brexit role. One other said, no one cares about Brexit. We couldn't give an F about it. If you choose to do such a monumental act of self-harm to yourselves, that's your problem. We don't want to hear about it. We don't want to know about it. We don't care about the UK politics. Boris' shift on China and Russia got him a lot of cred, but we don't care about what he's doing. Whether his motives are good or bad, all we do care about is whether you're with us or you're against us on foreign policy matters, and that's pretty blunt in that regard. It's not just we're not just that into you. We haven't got the bandwidth to care about Brexit and its details. But if the UK cares to create a row with the EU over Northern Ireland Protocol, we will certainly be annoyed with you. It wouldn't be a monumental act of self-harm, of indulgence in a moment of real crisis. We don't have time for this crap right now. Another one saying, the role of people like Daniel Hannan, Nigel Farage, and Steve Bannon has been a destructive one on foreign policy and will always one that we just still can't fathom. I don't think anyone sees the UK as leader on Ukraine. If there is a nomination for the Churchill, it doesn't go to Boris, but to Zelensky. There has been a concern about the British military trajectory for quite a while. The trauma of Iraq and Afghanistan seems to have run far deeper in the UK than in the US. And of course, the 2014 Syria vote was a turning point. The UK was not there, the French were, and the French are far more capable. The UK remains an important ally, but not our old instinct that the UK was the most important ally to us is no longer self-evident. Brexit plays a role in that. It creates questions about whether the UK politics is still functional. Another one said, Boris is a buffoon. I don't know how he gets away with it. He just seems to flip all of his hair and just make a joke. He's also a lot like Trump, just saying whatever he wants, whether it's true or not. When often Boris is reported in the US media, it is an allegory on our own experience with Trump. We had Trump, you have Boris. So sometimes the commentary is just to reassure us that it's not the US which has all these problems. Up until 2003, the UK exerted a very special interest on the US foreign policy. Before taking any decision, we would ask ourselves, what were the Brits thinking? You are almost like the agency of a US government. Tony Blair was the last. Now the UK is still an ally, but just another ally. It does not have the same importance as France, Germany, or Japan. The UK military intelligence relationship is different, but that is a unique realm. So again, you notice all these comments from these experts. They're all going in one way, very particular. We don't view Boris as malevolent, but fairly entertaining, a punchline, a joke. It's the stuff that's going on your own domestic politics is not reassuring. He's a clown, but he's our clown. But Keir Starmer is a decent guy. Because of Ukraine, yes, always forgiven for Boris. UK's done a great job in Ukraine. It took real courage for him to go into Kiev, and he jolted our system into arranging visits to the US Secretary of State, Blinken, and of course, the US Secretary of State Defense, Austin. Again, then the article continues, I have to confess, I was surprised by so much negative commentary. I'm not surprised at all, given if you've been following this at all, you should know the negative commentary that has been coming from the US for quite a while. That has been coming from there quite a while, so it's not really surprising that we're hearing such negative comments. Anyway, it continues. I had expected that the given attendees' overwhelming focus on Ukraine and, of course, the UK's strong role there would overshadow everything else. The group also included many people who have been critical in the past about the EU's lack of strategic capability and impact, or who had been a positive experience of the UK-US defense intelligence relationship. But none of this outweighed the overriding perception of the UK as a country declining in importance, both as a US ally and as a significant player internationally. As for Boris Johnson, while many expressed appreciation for his stance on Ukraine, this did not translate into a regard for him as a serious prime minister. So certainly many MPs, or certainly Conservative MPs, should be paying attention to that he is not being seen as a serious prime minister. You know, you've only got to look at the NATO summit where he was wandering around trying to, get Biden's attention. It looked absolutely pathetic on so many levels. Anyway, it continues, or it finishes off with this. My takeaway impression was this. In fact, that many of us in the US, as in the UK, Ukraine has bought Boris more time, but it has not bought him more credibility. Are we surprised? No, really, really not. This is, if you've been following any of this Brexit stuff for a while, especially stuff coming from the US, just like any country, they've looked at it and just gone, why? What's the point of Brexit? Doesn't make sense. And remember, us being in the EU gave us a lot of say, of course, in the EU, and we were considered to be obviously a US ally, which was again part of the special relationship, which would again help us to influence stuff going on in the EU. That's how America viewed us, as a very important ally. But the fact that we are now, as was said there by those experts, a very much diminishing role in world affairs, is something we are going to have to settle with. I really don't care, to be honest, that our international roles declining. Doesn't really bother me. It's been like that very much so since the Second World War. The only thing that stopped it, of course, was us joining the EU. And then, well, we're almost back to square one in many ways. And of course, as we've seen, as said there, you've got Poland, France, Germany being seen far more as important players to the US strategically as allies in Europe than we are at the moment. So certainly very, very interesting going forward, and certainly a massive hit to any of the Americans who are certainly sort of pro-Atlantic Bridge. The message, I think, was very loud and clear. Why do you still have this clown in office when there's so many scandals around? Why haven't you gotten rid of him? So ultimately, again, something very interesting, something that will probably go on to affect the UK quite significantly for quite some time. But of course, as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.